welcome back. What was that? Hey! Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel. I'm Rachel Zegler. For anybody who's new here, highly doubt it though. Welcome!
Rachel Zegler stunned the entertainment industry when she filed a massive 9-figure slander lawsuit against Trey Parker and Matt Stone, the infamous duo behind the long-running animated juggernaut South Park. News of the legal battle sent shockwaves throughout Hollywood, leaving insiders, fans, and even industry veterans scrambling to process what was happening. This wasn't a petty spat or a forgettable celebrity meltdown, it was a full-scale showdown that carried enormous cultural weight. On one side was a young actress whose career trajectory had already been shaken by the controversy surrounding Disney's Snow White reboot, a project that was supposed to mark her rise but instead became a lightning rod for criticism and online debate. On the other side were Parker and Stone, two unflinching comedy veterans who had spent decades cementing their reputations as provocateurs, gleefully tearing down public figures, institutions, and trends, never showing an ounce of fear when it came to controversy. The feud began after South Park aired what quickly became one of its most brutal and widely discussed episodes in recent memory. The episode zeroed in on the uproar surrounding Rachel's casting as the iconic Disney princess, blending satire with absurd exaggeration in the way only Parker and Stone can. The writers didn't merely poke fun, they launched a full-on parody assault, weaving in internet rumors, fan complaints, and cultural debates until the story became a whirlwind of chaos. At one point, a throwaway line about just making the prince gay reduced a heated Hollywood conversation about inclusivity into biting satire. From there, the absurdity only grew. Rachel's animated counterpart strutted through a dreamlike fantasy realm, clutching a jewel that inexplicably resembled a glowing smartphone, while tossing out wildly audacious reinterpretations of history that reflected the culture wars brewing in real life. To audiences, the spectacle was hilarious. Fans flooded Twitter, TikTok, and Reddit with clips, calling the episode one of South Park's sharpest takedowns in years. The satire hit so many hot-button issues at once: Hollywood's obsession with diversity discourse, the constant flood of reboots, the thin line between progress and pandering, that it became instant meme material. But behind the laughs, the real Rachel Zegler was seething. While some insiders initially suggested she would laugh it off, noting that she was savvy enough to understand how South Park operates, that assumption didn't last long. Days after the episode aired, TMZ released an explosive breakdown of its most savage moments. Suddenly, the jokes felt sharper, meaner, and far more personal. Each scene appeared to escalate in intensity, stacking insult on top of insult, until the episode reached its climax. A deliberately absurd musical number that didn't just lampoon Rachel but mercilessly skewered Hollywood's entire reliance on big-budget remakes, portraying the industry as creatively bankrupt. What started as another edgy cartoon gag quickly snowballed into a cultural flashpoint. Fans were split. Some praised Parker and Stone for their unfiltered satire, while others criticized the show for going too far and turning a young actress into a punchline for ratings. For Rachel, the episode was more than a comedy sketch, it was a direct hit to her already fragile public image, one she believed crossed the line from parody into outright defamation. Her lawsuit wasn't just about defending her name, it was about pushing back against an entertainment culture where mockery could become reputation-destroying spectacle overnight. Rachel Zegler's decision to file a $100 million lawsuit against Trey Parker and Matt Stone caught many by surprise. At first, industry insiders assumed the legal move was little more than a scare tactic, an aggressive way to pressure the South Park creators into offering a public apology or issuing some kind of retraction. But when her legal team arrived in court carrying boxes of documents and detailed accusations, it became clear that this wasn't just symbolic posturing. Rachel was serious, and the charges were damning. According to her legal complaint, the South Park episode in question didn't play like harmless satire. Instead, it systematically dismantled her public image, portraying her as a spoiled, out-of-touch celebrity who had single-handedly derailed Disney's blockbuster Snow White reboot. The lawsuit went so far as to say that she wasn't just mocked, she was turned into the scapegoat, framed as the final nail in the coffin for a film already weighed down by controversy. The filing accused Parker and Stone of crossing a dangerous line, leaving behind edgy parody and stepping directly into the territory of character assassination. The lawsuit even highlighted specific scenes, pointing out one in which cartoon Rachel was shown pocketing $40 million of the film's budget while sneering about cheap studio snacks. Her lawyers argued that the gag was not only maliciously false but deliberately crafted to suggest she had siphoned off money and tanked the project for personal gain. For Zegler, these moments weren't just tasteless jokes, they were reputational landmines that detonated across her career. Almost immediately after the episode aired, job opportunities began evaporating. Several studios reportedly backed away from discussions with her team, while one executive bluntly admitted they wanted to wait for the controversy to blow over before considering her for future roles. For Rachel, this was the smoking gun. It proved, she argued, that the animated parody wasn't just comedy, it was actively causing her financial harm, tarnishing her brand in a way that could take years to repair. The announcement of the lawsuit itself unfolded with almost cinematic timing. Parker and Stone were in the middle of a writing session in Culver City when breaking news alerts from Variety and Deadline lit up their phones simultaneously. Staff members recalled how the room went silent for a moment as everyone checked their screens. The co-creators glanced at each other, visibly irritated but also faintly amused by the absurdity of it all. They had spent decades being sued, threatened, and protested, whether by religious organizations, corporate giants, or angry activists stationed outside Comedy Central's offices. Yet even by their standards, a single actress demanding 9 figures in damages was something new. One of the writers tried to lighten the mood with a quip, "Well, I guess that means we're finally worth $100 million each." Nervous laughter rippled through the room, but the tension never fully lifted. Beneath the jokes, Matt Stone felt a shift, a recognition that the cultural landscape had changed dramatically since South Park first debuted in 1997. Back then, their raunchy late-night cable satire flew under the radar, shielded by a niche audience and the looser media climate of the time. Now, every gag was dissected online, amplified across social media, and measured against the careers and reputations it could make or break. But now, every joke doesn't just air and fade into late-night obscurity, it detonates online like a bomb. Within seconds, clips are dissected, re-shared, and debated in front of millions across Twitter, TikTok, and YouTube. In this hyper-connected era, the stakes were higher than ever. The very future of South Park, including the duo's monumental Paramount Plus deal, rumored to be worth nearly $1 billion, could suddenly be at risk if a court ruled that their parody of Snow White crossed the line into outright defamation. What had once been shrugged off as just another South Park gag was now being examined under the harshest legal and cultural microscope the show had ever faced. Almost overnight, Parker and Stone's infamous nothing's off-limits energy was put to its biggest test yet, and the court of public opinion was sharply divided. Online reactions spiraled into chaos. On one side, supporters of the creators praised them as the last true defenders of uncensored comedy, rallying around the viral hashtag #SatireIsNotSlander. To them, the lawsuit was an attack on free expression and proof that comedians were being muzzled by Hollywood sensitivities. On the other side, those who sympathized with Rachel argued that she had been the target of relentless online harassment, much of it amplified by the episode's cruel caricature. To them, her decision to sue wasn't about money, it was an act of courage, a bold attempt to hold even powerful satirists accountable for when jokes tip into reputational harm.
It's like the most comfortable pair of jeans on the waist. I'm saying, and they're super affordable. So if you're like tight on cash and you want good jeans.
Meanwhile, the story was everywhere. Late-night hosts couldn't resist making light of the bizarre princess versus paper cutouts clash, turning it into their opening monologues. Cable news shows booked panels of media analysts and legal experts who debated one surreal but pressing question: can a cartoon really be defamatory? The issue, once laughable, was now a national talking point. Inside the South Park production offices, the mood was tense. Parker and Stone, normally quick to flip scandals into new episodes, suddenly found themselves on lockdown. Known for their instinct to turn every controversy into material, their first reaction was to brainstorm ways to lampoon the lawsuit itself. Early concepts included a parody courtroom musical titled Sue Me, complete with puppet trials, cartoon versions of themselves testifying under oath, and crude stick-figure courtroom sketches that mocked the seriousness of the case. But before any of those ideas could leave the room, their lawyers intervened. They warned the team that even a single joke could be spun as retaliation or weaponized in court. The satire machine, for once, had to be paused. For Rachel, the lawsuit was more than legal paperwork, it was a personal mission. Sources close to her claimed she wasn't just seeking damages but was determined to send a message. She wasn't an easy target, and she refused to be reduced to a punchline. Behind closed doors, she was said to oscillate between fierce determination and visible exhaustion, caught between the burden of taking on two of television's most fearless comedians and the weight of defending her reputation in the eyes of both Hollywood and the public. Rachel Zegler became convinced that unless she fought back, she would forever be remembered as nothing more than that joke in a dress with a phone, immortalized in memes and recycled as a punchline for years to come. The fear of being branded permanently by a single satirical caricature pushed her to act. Yet, not everyone was sympathetic. High-profile critics, including actor Tom Cruise, dismissed her response as overly dramatic, branding her lawsuit theatrical and out of proportion. Her supporters, however, countered with a different perspective. They argued that celebrities like Kanye West or even Queen Elizabeth, both of whom had been lampooned mercilessly on South Park, had the cushion of long-established legacies and fanbases large enough to shrug off the ridicule. Rachel, by contrast, was still in the delicate phase of building her career. For someone in the middle of a comeback attempt, a viral cartoon could be devastating in ways that more seasoned stars would never have to worry about. As the case wound its way through the Los Angeles courts, free speech advocates quickly took sides. Legal briefs and commentary began stressing the importance of protecting parody and satire as essential elements of public discourse. "We firmly believe in the freedom to parody public personalities and events," one legal analyst stated. "The question isn't whether South Park has the right to make fun of her, it's where exactly the line is drawn between slander and satire." Parker and Stone, known for their brazen humor, remained uncharacteristically silent at first. Insiders later revealed that their lawyers had instructed them to keep quiet until the defense strategy was solidified. When the silence finally broke, their statement was as brief as it was calculated: 2 sentences, nothing more. Still, colleagues hinted that the pair were eager to eventually spin the entire ordeal into comedic gold, provided their legal team gave them the green light. Legal experts watching the case noted that everything hinged on one central issue: the fine line between parody and defamation. Historically, courts have protected jokes that no reasonable person would take literally, citing prior rulings that safeguarded even the harshest satire. But this case sat in a murky middle ground. In the disputed episode, cartoon Rachel sang a ridiculous song implying that she rewrote iconic Disney sequences just to secure higher paychecks. Fans might have brushed it off as absurd exaggeration, but Rachel's legal team argued that not everyone was media literate enough to tell the difference. As evidence, her lawyers presented actual social media posts from viewers who seemed to believe Rachel had really hijacked the production, redirecting the budget for her own benefit. To them, this was proof that the parody didn't just mock reality, it distorted it in a way that harmed Rachel's reputation. Parker and Stone's camp countered by producing an even larger stack of posts from fans ridiculing the absurdity of the episode, insisting the joke was so outrageous that no rational person could take it seriously. The entire saga underscored a broader question: when does comedy stop being harmless entertainment and start warping public perception? Parker and Stone maintained that the show was never intended as a factual portrayal, only as an over-the-top piece of comedy meant to spark laughter. Yet the damage to Rachel's image and career prospects was already undeniable. And then came another complication. While Disney was not formally named in the lawsuit, insiders suggested the studio's executives were quietly nervous. Behind the scenes, there were growing fears that courtroom testimony could expose internal decision-making, especially about Snow White's ballooning budget and creative missteps. If the case pulled those details into the public eye, it could create an even bigger scandal for Disney, adding corporate embarrassment to Rachel's personal grievances. As the lawsuit gained traction, legal experts began speculating about what the discovery process might unearth. If subpoenas were issued for production notes, private emails, or internal studio exchanges that touched on Parker and Stone's parody, Disney's legal team was reportedly ready to intervene immediately to keep sensitive documents sealed. But the court had other plans, scheduling a trial for early the following year. The timing was awkward for everyone involved. For Rachel, it meant that if she accepted new acting roles, the case could overshadow her appearances on red carpets, reviving headlines just when she'd hoped to move forward. For Parker and Stone, it meant that as South Park geared up for its next season, they would be navigating the bizarre possibility of responding on air to a lawsuit that had tied their hands for months. Behind the scenes, many entertainment lawyers predicted the conflict might end in a quiet settlement. Hollywood, after all, thrives on making scandals disappear behind closed doors. But Parker and Stone refused to play by those rules. To them, settling would set a dangerous precedent, one that would invite every celebrity who disliked being satirized to file their own lawsuits. According to reports, Trey Parker put it bluntly during a conversation with a colleague, "The next joke dies before we even write it if we pay up now." That sentiment crystallized their stance and resonated powerfully with defenders of free speech. The American Civil Liberties Union soon stepped into the fray, filing an amicus brief on behalf of the creators. Their argument was straightforward: satire is not a luxury, it is a safeguard. By mocking cultural icons and skewering public figures, comedy ensures that power can't go unchallenged. If celebrities could silence parody by claiming reputational harm, the ACLU warned, Hollywood would become a carefully polished facade, stars shielded by PR teams and studios, never exposed to scrutiny or critique. Rachel's team, sensing the weight of this argument, carefully recalibrated their public narrative. They insisted that this wasn't a crusade against comedy itself or an attempt to muzzle free speech. Instead, they framed it as a deeply personal stand, one individual fighting back when a joke ceases to be satire and becomes personally destructive. To them, Rachel wasn't asking the courts to ban parody, she was asking them to acknowledge that even satire has limits when reputations and livelihoods are on the line. The battle lines were drawn, not only in the courtroom but in the broader cultural debate about comedy, power, and the consequences of laughter. Rachel chose her stage carefully. During a high-profile late-night talk show appearance, she sat under the studio lights, her voice calm but tinged with emotion. At moments her words broke into quiet tears as she stressed that she did not oppose satire itself. She understood its place in culture and even admitted to laughing at sharp comedy in the past. What she opposed, she clarified, was the careless distortion that crossed the line from parody into defamation, the kind that could scar a reputation and derail an entire career. Her sincerity resonated with many viewers, generating headlines the next morning that painted her as brave and vulnerable, though online the response was split. Admirers praised her courage, detractors dismissed her as hypersensitive, accusing her of failing to take a joke. When the pre-trial hearing arrived, the courthouse felt less like a place of law and more like a theater. Crowds gathered outside, not just with protest signs but with memes printed on poster boards, TikTok edits playing from phones, and a barrage of hashtags flooding every platform. Team Rachel and Team South Park squared off in a cultural tug-of-war that blurred the line between legal battle and internet spectacle. Reasoned commentary struggled to surface above the noise of trolls, hot takes, and outrage-driven influencers who thrived on the chaos. Inside, Parker and Stone leaned into understated showmanship. Dressed in muted suits, they projected seriousness, but the details betrayed their mischief. Trey Parker's cufflinks were shaped like miniature TVs, while Matt Stone's tie was covered in tiny cartoon paper cutouts. Their understated rebellion sent a ripple through the press gallery, fueling the media circus. Cameras flashed relentlessly as they walked in, playing their part as satirists who couldn't help but poke fun even in the most serious setting. Rachel, in stark contrast, arrived separately with her legal team. Wearing a tailored navy blazer, she projected composure, though the cameras captured a fleeting glance she directed toward Parker and Stone. Was it anger? Anxiety? Determination? Or perhaps even a silent hope that the case might bring justice, or closure? Analysts debated endlessly, freezing frames of her expression as though every micro-emotion could reveal the outcome of the trial. Once proceedings began, Rachel's lawyers honed in on a particular joke from the South Park episode, a scene in which cartoon studio executives hurled bags of money at her as she shouted, "Modernization isn't cheap, peasants." Her attorneys argued that such imagery, absurd as it seemed, gave viewers the impression she was greedy, arrogant, and demanding diva-level perks in real life. The defense fired back with their signature bluntness. This is South Park. This is the show with talking towels and time machines on tricycles. Who in their right mind thinks this is a documentary? Laughter trickled through the courtroom at the remark, but Rachel's team doubled down, citing social media posts from viewers who had taken the parody literally. The judge, clearly recognizing the cultural stakes, made a pivotal call. The question of whether an average viewer could reasonably distinguish parody from fact would be left to a jury. It was a middle ground decision that satisfied no one. For Rachel's camp, it meant the case wasn't dismissed, but her victory was far from guaranteed. For Parker and Stone, it meant enduring a public trial, with all the risks of courtroom revelations and testimony. As both parties exited the courthouse, their paths illuminated the larger divide. Rachel remained unwavering, framing her fight as a demand for truth and accountability in an age where satire could so easily blur into misinformation. Parker and Stone, by contrast, radiated confidence, portraying themselves as defenders of artistic freedom and the irreverent spirit of comedy. What began as a lawsuit had now transformed into something far larger, a societal flashpoint, a battle over the limits of humor, the responsibilities of art, and the fragile line between laughter and harm.